We have our final session of the morning, which will be a panel discussing the future of decentralized identities, reputation, and trust, and will be moderated by ETH Barcelona's very own ManuAlzuru, with a conversation with Lluis Bardet from Fractal ID, Ajinkya Kulkarni from Circles UBI, and Samuel Hawksby-Robinson from Status IM. So let's get everybody on stage. Give them a round of applause.
All right. First of all, welcome guys, and welcome all of you guys. Today we're going to talk a little bit about identity, but before we get started, actually I want you guys to introduce yourself very quickly, very quickly.
Sure. So my name is Lluis. I am the Chief Growth Officer at Fractal ID. We do decentralized identity infrastructure for Web3, but we also do the servicing of that. So we do have the, you can say, more boring KYC onboarding bit, but at the same time we also build the infrastructure to connect that in a decentralized way.
Sam?
Yeah, so I'm Samuel Hawksby-Robinson, full name. I've been in the crypto space since 2015. I've worked on a number of decentralized identity projects over the years. I'm here representing Status IM, where we're doing a lot of work on pseudo-anonymity. I'll leave it there.
Awesome. Welcome. AK.
Yeah, my name is Ajinkya. I work with Circles UBI, which is a universal basic income project based on mesh credit and personal currencies. And recently we've started a project called Circles Entropy, which sort of tries to make the existing Circles UBI implementation more privacy preserving. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Let's get started with the first questions. What are the key benefits of decentralized identities compared to traditional centralized identity systems? And let's start with you, Lluis.
Sure, yeah, thank you for that. So decentralized identity, I think it's a great use of blockchain technology because we're not building something for the space. We're actually taking digital identity, which is something that is needed for scalability of many businesses, from fintech, but also from other solutions, and actually giving it superpowers through decentralization. I mean, there's many benefits, but just to mention a couple of them, which I think are the more significant. Decentralization for the sake of decentralization, is it something that we should do? Should we give the data and the power back to the user? Yes, we should do that. So that's something that we have in this case. But in here, we also have additional elements. For instance, something that's very valuable, and to be honest, what is destroying fintech, is that you don't have reusability of your identity. Why? Because you have a lot of players, they don't talk to each other, they compete with each other. Then you have a bunch of companies that need identity or to verify the identity of someone when they are not physically there. And also they don't talk to each other. So then they are not going to trust each other, there are rules for portability, there's legislation, but doesn't really work. What it works is to give that identity back to the user and tell the user, connect it anywhere that you want. And that's something that we can do with decentralized identity, and it's very powerful for many industries in Web3 and beyond Web3.
Maybe Sam, can we talk a little bit about the current state of identities? Like, how are people, let's say, using their identities on a centralized way, and what is it that we're trying to change? Maybe you can explain a little bit of that.
Yeah. So like on the subject of a decentralized identity, it's about ownership. It's about what do you control versus what does somebody else control? And it's about what, so for example, your identity on traditional social media, so Facebook for example, you are what is being sold, basically. You are the product, and you are being sold to marketing agencies. The data that you provide, every interaction that you make is, like, we all know this. Everybody here, we understand that that's the nature. Decentralized identity is about taking back control, and it's about true sovereignty over your identity, and it's about using the power of autonomy, so you can choose to give up a piece of information about your identity. You can choose to withhold whatever information that you want, and if you want to be marketed to, that should be your choice. It shouldn't be built into the system.
Yeah, totally. we all know that Facebook, even if you don't have a Facebook account or a Google account, we know that they're tracking you pretty much everywhere that you're going, because most of the websites, they have a Facebook pixel, they have a Google pixel. So even if you don't have a Facebook account, even if you don't have a Google account, they're still tracking you. They still have you as a number. They might not know necessarily your name, but they're tracking all your activity across the web, because basically many of the developers are allowing them by installing their pixel on their application. So even if I don't sign up, I still have like an identity linked to me. But it's like top down. It's like them assigning a number to me, which is kind of weird. What are your thoughts, AK?
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. So identities. Yeah. Like you said, like Sam already stressed, that identities and like the data that sort of constitutes your identity is something that should be in the hands of users, and like the user should have like full control of how much of it is revealed. And like, yeah, what Web 2 does is basically you just sort of seed that identity, the data that constitutes your identity to corporations, because you just like skim over the terms and conditions as you just click I agree. And what a future would look like is where users are actively made aware of what data they wish to share and what data they do not wish to share. And I mean, there are several instances where like even everyday instances where you end up revealing stuff that you don't necessarily want to reveal. Like suppose you're in your early 20s and you want to go to a bar or like a club to party, and you show the identity card. The bouncer knows, like sees all the data about you, but what you really need to show the bouncer is just that you're above 18 years of age, right?
Yeah, so. Totally. So, in your perspective, how can decentralized identity solutions improve privacy and security for individuals and organizations? I think I kind of already answered that question. How do you think it actually can improve the privacy? Is it by just giving the user the possibility of owning their data, or are there more things that we can do in terms of privacy? And I'm asking this question is because I have realized that we in the crypto community, we talk about these decentralized identities, but we have entities who are actually issuing those identities.
Right.
So isn't it that very similar to what we're trying to fight against?
Right.
Are we creating the same bullshit, or what's going on there?
Yeah, I mean, I say sometimes that, you know, instead of decentralization, what is probably happening in a lot of instances is actually re-centralization. So like instead of one, like 5 companies having access to your identity data, now like there are 500 companies who have access to your.
So is that because the identities are public? Or they can access it and they can see it? Why is that?
Right. So I mean, I can't talk about the whole identity scene in general. But I just I don't want to shill my own project here. But like I just want to say one thing that we do kind of differently, that decentralized identity projects might benefit from. Basically, like in our system, like we don't do a KYC. Like we are a UBI project.
Yeah, but does that mean that it's private?
I mean, you're not revealing anything, so there is no question of. So when you sign up for the project, you basically need to get 3 people who are already in the system to trust you, and that's all. Like you don't reveal your name, you don't reveal anything about yourself. So if you're not revealing anything, then you don't have to expose anything, and then you don't have to worry about privacy.
Got it.
So that's where the trust aspect comes in.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. So now we're talking about trust,
right,
which is, I personally believe is going to be the next big thing in terms of the Web3 space. In the last few months, I've been hearing over and over and over trust networks. This is the next step. I believe, where instead of having companies issuing identities to you, you have people self-issuing their identities, saying, this is me. And if the companies and the people like you, that's it. That's all what you need. You just need to interact with the people that trust, or the contracts that you trust, or the DAOs that you trust. So instead of, let's say, instead of interacting with a contract that you have no idea, you're actually interacting with things that the community are vouching for. That's at least the way that I see the future, or at least how I think organizations and individuals are going to interact. But again, coming back to what I was saying regarding the problem that I'm seeing in the space, is that now we're trying to create this new form of identities, like we have Web3 social identities, and these Web3 social identities are all public. To my point of view, I think that's very problematic. If we have, let's say, identities that anyone can see, who are all my friends, who are all the people that I trust. Imagine that you have a trust network, and you are, let's say, you are an activist, and you are, let's say, working against a specific totalitarian government. And that totalitarian government is able to see your trust network. What the fuck? I think it could be very problematic.
I can add something to that. So its status, for those that don't know, it's a decentralized peer-to-peer messaging network. On top of that, you also have embedded a crypto wallet. But what you start with at the very beginning is just public keys, and you generate those on your device. So you're not assigned them, so it's self-custodial. And then what happens is that you start with the base the crypto key, and then you get the private element of that. And that's basically something that we call the chat key. But that's essentially your identity as far as like the network is concerned.
So it's a self-issued identity.
Self-issued identity, yeah. And then what the user can do is in the profile they can then add different elements of the identity. So we have a number of options for, like, let's say you want to add a profile picture, for example. Then you set, like, who am I willing to share that with? Then you also have information about, but the whole time, the information doesn't go up to some central server. The information like stays on your device, and then it's only broadcast to other members of the network when at the right moment.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that in the future we're gonna see these type of applications where actually I get to know you, I get to meet you, and I share my contact, and I share whatever I want to share. As you said, my profile picture, my Telegram, my Twitter. Maybe after we build trust, I share with you my Instagram. Maybe we build more trust, and then I share with you my OnlyFans.
Yeah.
We build more trust, and then I share also access to vote for me for my DAO. And I say that I believe that you are good. I'm a good marketeer. So whenever there's a marketeer question coming into the DAO or a proposal, you vote for that for me. So we can start playing with identity and start building like these Lego blocks that we call it in the Web3 space, where trust is going to be very, very important, very key. Lluis, I want to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think that something that's important is to actually mention what is identity, because there's a lot of misunderstanding around this. Thank you. So identity, if you take the definition of the dictionary, is what makes a human unique, which means it has a point of uniqueness there. But what I want to say here is that identity is many things. Like, you might define yourself to be a solar punk, for instance, and that is good for doing many things in Web3. It might be good for joining a DAO, it might be good for going around. You can put it in your social media and Web3, etc., etc. But now you try to get a credit card for whatever you want, which is something that we do on a daily basis, and you go there and say, hey, I'm a solar punk, and they will tell you, congratulations, that's amazing, but I also need to know that you are not a citizen of the US.
So you're saying kind of like an identity is a unique thing, but you can add like different masks or like different parts of your identity to it.
That's exactly the point I want to make, is that we need to let users own their identity, but also we need to let users selectively share different parts according to the request that they get. So for a DAO, you don't need to share anything about you. You don't even need to share your real identity. But you probably want to prove that you are not a bot that is trying to spam the network for something. And then for other applications, you will need to share actually more levels of identity. Like it's a spectrum of what you can share. And everything should be able to be shared by the user on their own consent, depending on the requests that come to them.
How do we do that now?
Yeah, that is where the complexity is. And what we have done is we have gone through centralized systems. So trust systems, as you were mentioning before, you need to trust an entity.
An issuer.
An issuer in this case, yes, to issue, you can call it an attestation or anything about that person saying, hey, yes, this person is not a citizen of the US. Or you can directly access the data of this person.
I see. I personally have an issue with that, with all of that type of framework. Because when you have someone issuing an identity to you, it means that they're the king.
They are.
They can revoke the identity whenever the heck they want. You know, they can actually decide if you're a member or not of these communities and so on. To me, that's very, very problematic. So we've been talking about, you know, how we can create these self-issue identities. But again, the trust element, I think, becomes very, very important. So how can we create, let's say, civil resistance, let's say, communities? Right now, like, the only way that I'm seeing that we're trying to create civil resistance is by then trusting someone to verify, let's say, your national ID card, which is also very, very problematic, I think. Because, for example, I'm originally from Venezuela, and I was fighting oppression there in Venezuela, and they don't like me much there. So they can actually just revoke my identity. I don't have a Venezuelan passport anymore. So am I a Venezuelan? Am I not Venezuelan? Like, they are the ones deciding for me if I am or if I'm not. That shit is bad, I think. So now that we are in the DAO space, and we're trying to create these new trust networks, and it's not anymore about if you have an identity issued by this specific government or not. It's like, are you a real human? So I think in the future, events like this are going to be key for creating these trust networks. Because now with the age of AI, we're gonna just have so many bots on the internet, and we don't know if these bots are being manipulated or being handled by a specific entity. We don't know what is the agenda of these bots. So now more than ever, we need a form of understanding who are real, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's the necessity of the human element, because it's about what essentially is validation. Like, how do you know? How do you trust? How is trust earned? And in the current context, in a interstate relationships, interpersonal relationships, we have this concept where you're assigned your identity from an authoritative figure. But what actually matters the most is what I think of you, really, what you can do for me or for others, and then I could vouch for you in behalf to somebody that trusts me, and these are the networks that we need to be building.
Totally. So it means that trust is contextual as well.
Yeah.
Trust is not for everything. So I trust my mom when she gives me a recommendation and tells me, go meet that guy. I go and meet that guy because it's my mom who's telling me to go and meet that guy. But if I go and I meet that guy, and that guy is not necessarily what I was expecting for, I start losing a little bit of trust on my mom. You know, so whenever she tells me again, go and meet this other person, I'd be like, not really, mom, thank you so much. So it's contextual, I say, because it's for that specific thing. But I trust my mom to make decisions, for example, about money, or to make decisions about traveling. So trust, when we talk about trust, it's not like a general trust. It's like, trust for what, right? So I might trust someone to go and buy something for me, but I might not necessarily trust that person to, let's say, go in my house, for example, or manage my crypto, or stuff like that, right? So I'm thinking more and more that in the future we're gonna see that these type of trust networks that are contextual and that are bottom up, and it would be like individuals actually vouching for each other, as you said.
Yeah.
Like I vouch that you were here in Barcelona because I saw you here in real life. I vouch that you care about identities, but I don't vouch that you're a good manager of $5 billion treasury. Not yet. Maybe in a couple of months
I'm not
you show
certain
me that you have done some great work, and
Yeah.
maybe I can start vouching for you on that.
No, it's true. But the thing, we have this concept of scale. So when you look on a national level, there's this inherent scale with a central authority. So you need to switch up the paradigm. When it's bottom up and you're self-issuing at your own self-identity, then the networks are inherently smaller, but they need to be by necessity, because there's no way a large network can be Sybil resistant. Particularly as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, it becomes harder and harder to build trust among entities that you can't possibly be able to verify. And so, sorry, please go ahead, yeah.
No, yeah, I think that you're mentioning something that I've been thinking quite a lot, is that we have now these trust scores, that are being created by centralized nation states. We heard of what's happening in China and so on. But here we're talking about very, very different things.
Oh, yeah,
we're saying instead of having someone on the top putting a trust score, it's going to be the people who decide, I trust that guy, therefore I trust what he trusts in terms of math, because I trust that that guy is good in math. Maybe not in other things, but in math, I know that if this person is saying that they trust another mathematician, then I can directly go to the other person, right? Because there's a node between us. So instead of having like a top-down, let's say, social score, I think in the future, each individual is going to create their own score. Like, because this is how it is already without computers. I have my social trust score in my head, like this person has rug pull, not has rug pull, it's already there. Like we already have this type of trust network in our head. It's just not digitized.
Yeah.
And it's not. And the problem that I have is that whenever it becomes digitized, and if it's completely public, it's gonna be chaos. So we need to have these completely private and owned by ourselves.
So the thing here.
Go ahead.
No, the thing here is what he's mentioning is the problem with scalability. That when you go n iterations and you need to trust someone that trusts someone that trusts someone, it just takes one person to just not act in the benefit of the whole group to destroy the trust in this whole system.
Yeah, the thing is that the closer you are to the node, or the one that you're trusting, the more trust you have. The more degrees of separation. Yeah. The trust decrease exponentially. So if you have 5 people in between, trust is just way less, let's say.
Yeah.
But there is another thing, like if you have 5 people in the middle, then there are like several ways to reach that person. So if there is one trust path which is probably not like faulty for whatever reason, you have like 20 other trust paths, out of which at least one might be the right one. So there is this advantage, like there is this trade-off, like when you're close by, when 2 nodes are closer, like the trust is higher, and when the nodes are farther away, the trust is lower, but then like there are different ways of like constructing trust paths. So it sort of evens out, even though like not completely even out, but there is like a balancing factor because of the fact that, I mean, if you have a lot of trust connections, then like if one trust path is not the right one, you have like other options. So it sort of on a long term, on a long enough scale, like it kind of becomes an even sum game.
All right. Also, I've been thinking quite a lot about how can we create these trust networks. And one conclusion that I've come, that I have, is that in order for us to create like this vouching system we need to create some sort of rituals or some sort of way for us to come together and actually vouch for each other. And that's why I think events in general are going to be super key for creating these sort of networks where people come and meet each other and actually know who they are. And trust is being built with repetition. Like trust cannot be built like from one moment to another without having repetitive interactions.
Right.
So repetitive interactions between human beings is actually what creates trust, right? So let's go back. Let's go back to the to identity. What are the potential implications of decentralized identities for industries such as finance, healthcare, or maybe some other forms of other forms of services? Let's go with you, Lluis.
Yeah, I kind of spoke about this at the beginning, but this is what I said, is that now you have different centralized parties that within the healthcare industry or within the issuers as well of those identities, they don't trust each other, they compete against each other. So they are not going to share information. Regulation pushes them to share it, and there's this portability rule in Europe that actually, even though you can portate someone's KYC from a bank to another, it's not happening in the practice, just because they find ways to compete about that. The only way to get around this is to give the identity back to the person, and then they connect it where they want, and they revoke it when they want as well, which is something very important. Unlimited access to your identity of everything that you have, that's crazy. You should just share selectively what you want and for a limited time. Then you would really have collaboration, I think.
I mean, in healthcare, like there was a lot of furor over apps, apps that were tracking, like these COVID tracking apps that had come, and there were a lot of concerns about data being stored and shared with like third parties, and what you could do in the healthcare sector with sort of having full control of your identity is you can sort of still do contact tracing, but not reveal who you are, or like selectively reveal who you are, or like selectively reveal some aspects of you that are relevant to like a contact tracing, for example. So this is how like healthcare could be made better using.
Yeah, totally. I think that in the future we need to have decentralized identity that are private by default, and that the user actually decides what they reveal to the public or what they make public to the world.
Like actually, it's also not binary. Like it's not like private. It's not binary between private and public.
What do you mean with that?
Like there might be certain data that I might want to reveal, not to everybody, but to my like near and dear ones, and then there are.
Totally, for sure. That's what I'm saying. Like it's more like you control your identity.
Right,
you decide what you basically allow other people to see. Mm-hmm. But there's a problem in Web3. Mm-hmm. Once you reveal something, you cannot unreveal it. So how can we deal with that?
Well,
do you guys have any ideas?
Well, there's an answer. Yeah. It's called zero knowledge proofs.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but still, like even if you have a zero knowledge proof, mm-hmm. like once you have revealed it, is revealed, right? You cannot really take it back. What you can do is, what you can do right now with the current state of the technology that we have, you reveal it, maybe you update, and maybe you don't see the update anymore, right? But what you have already revealed, they will see it. So for example, if I reveal to you, let's say certain aspect of myself, or for example, I reveal to you social media handle that I'm using as Anon, I cannot take that back, right? So you still have that with you, like, and you can make it public to other people as well.
But okay, so that's true, but a zero knowledge proof has a slightly different dynamic. Zero knowledge proofs is giving proof of something without revealing what that something is, which is a slightly more esoteric.
But if you do reveal what that something is?
So the way that it works, so let's imagine you want to provide a zero knowledge proof of your age. The real question is, am I of or above a particular age? Mm-hmm. And so that's actually a Boolean question, which is a yes or a no. And so through through various mechanisms, zero-proof mechanisms, the answer can be returned as a yes or a no, because fundamentally that's all that the asker requires from you as the data holder.
I completely agree with you.
Yeah.
My question is more like, let's say that I revealed not above 18 or under 18. That's not what I'm revealing.
I actually have a nice example. Like,
Yeah,
suppose I reveal that, like, I am part of a resistance group against the current regime in an authoritarian country, and then, like, after that I choose not to reveal it, or I say I'm no more associated. But now, like there is history of me being associated with a.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Okay. No, please go ahead. All I was going to say is that you don't need to own one identity. An individual can have contextual identity, and you can have and you have the right to maintain multiple identities when it comes to how you interact with the world. So you might have an identity that's deeply rooted in some underground movement, and like providing a zero knowledge proof of something like that would be like obviously disastrous in a country like Iran or in Tibet, where resistance movements are being brutally put down. But you still want to be able to show solidarity with those that you were working with. And so that's where having multiple identities owned by a single person can really help.
100%. So what you're saying is that we need plausible deniability, right?
Yeah.
We need that. Because, like, imagine this scenario. I have my identity, and my identity is my I. And I come to, let's say, I join the synagogue group. And I join with my I, the synagogue group. And then I come to a country that is against the synagogue group. And they ask me, can you scan your eye here to see if you can enter this group? And they're like, oh, fuck, you cannot enter. That means that you're already in. My friend, come this way.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's fucked up. Yeah. You know? And that's the problem that we have, is that if we don't have plausible deniability, is an issue, super big issue. So I agree with you that we need to have some forms of saying, yeah, that wasn't me, that's not my key, right? That's not my key, that's not me. That's when there is actually plausible deniability. So we cannot empower the authoritarians or the people that are going to oppress us, you know?
Actually, I don't think you need plausible deniability, or you want plausible deniability in such a system. What you want is selective disclosure.
Yeah, but what about what I used, the example that I used to tell you? Just that example. Let's talk about that specific example.
It's about trust and what you make public as well.
Not really.
I'm coming
to a country and they're telling me, you need to scan your eye.
And
like, I have only one eye. I cannot say that wasn't my eye. Sorry, you know? You see what I mean? So plausible deniability, I think, is really, really key.
That's to put it clear, that's fucked up that someone asks you to scan your eye and then they will link everything to that biometric identifier and everyone will be able to see that. That's not what it should be. That's happening today in centralized systems, in any sort of systems.
That's what I was saying when I'm talking about plausible deniability. With my eye, I cannot really have plausible deniability.
You should just not have someone collect your eye and linking it to you and store that data and they do whatever they want with that data. That's what you shouldn't have. You shouldn't have this data and who manages it. Who issues your identity, what says what qualifies as your identity, which are usually centralized parties known as countries and governments. And then how it is that managed is both things. We need decentralization of both, and it's a progressive thing that you can solve through knowing that you can share what you want with whoever you share it. Share the same that you share with your family, that you also need to share it with a country that is not yours, or with a company, or that when you KYC, that all that information that you use for KYC, which includes your source of wealth, where do you live, even what's the name of your parents if they take your IDs, that for some reason you're just joining a game, that the only thing that they want is to know that you're a human being and not a bot, so you don't destroy their token economy. And they also need to know what's the name of your parents and where do you live exactly. And I think that's the selective disclosure that we need to work on building. We need to build something that, even though it's easy to manage, that you can bring as much as you can, that nobody can get into this and get all the information, and that everyone accepts that only knowing for a certain period of time what they really need to know is good enough for them.
I agree with all of that you said, but I don't agree with the possible deniability. I think it's key that we have possible deniability.
You should never tie. So, in the crypto space, biometrics should be complete anathema. You should never be associating anything that ties directly to yourself if you want to be able to deny it in the future. So, if we're building a system where it's bottom up, if any organization is asking for things like biometrics and things like that, then we should just not use it. I think the problem is if you get in a context of interfacing with a state or a large organization, and they're demanding biometrics information.
I try to encourage no.
There's a big problem with that, because now you're interfacing with somebody that has physical power over you, and that's a dynamic that's a very long-term problem to solve.
No. I think it's a problem right now.
I do agree that it's a problem right now, but what I'm saying is that overcoming that problem, you need to subvert the state, essentially. You need to build sub-state infrastructure that transcends national authority.
Totally. Yeah, we're here, most of us, we're coming from all over the place, all over the world. It doesn't really matter the imaginary lines, right? It doesn't really matter. We have run out of time, but there are some really good questions here. We're going to talk about them outside. One of them is, what role do decentralized storage as IPFS play in the DID future? What's the difference between trust votes and voting based on pure popularity? Let's talk outside. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming here today, and thank you guys for expressing your opinions. Again.
And thank you for the great moderation of the panel.
Thank you. Again, it's really, really important, I believe, that everything that we create, we're conscious of the issues that could bring us back. So we're creating tools that can give us freedom, but that same tools that can give us freedom can also enslave us. So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thanks.